Welcome to Speak for Yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley on this awesome Monday afternoon. Thanks for joining us. All right, we have a fantastic show planned for you today. Brian Cox, former Miami Dolphin great, will join us to talk about the passing of Don Shula, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. Stick around for that. That's coming up in about 40 minutes. But we're going to start today talking about Andy Dalton and the Dallas Cowboys. And we're going to go out to an oldie but a goodie. An old friend of ours, Sean Merriman's going to join us from his crib. Welcome back to Speak for Yourself, Sean. Good to have you here. Lights out.
Yes.
And we're going to start out talking about Andy Dalton, the Dallas Cowboys, and Dak Prescott. The NFL Network's Tom Pelissero says that the Cowboys signing of Andy Dalton to a one-year deal that could be worth as much as $7 million will have no impact on Dak Prescott's contract situation or playing situation in Dallas. Mike Florio of ProFootballTalk.com says, hey, maybe the Cowboys will rescind their franchise tag on Dak Prescott. And former Cowboy Dez Bryant offered these words over Twitter. Nothing against Andy Dalton because I think he's a great player, but the Cowboys are extremely out of line. Pay Dak. I watched the Cowboys pay Tony Romo twice, once without a winning record. I guess the Cowboys viewing the QB position as a plug-in piece because of the dominant offense. All right, Marcel, let's get us rolling here. Do you think the Cowboys signing Andy Dalton will have any impact on Dak contract or even on the field?
I think it will have an impact on Dak. We already know when you're talking about a team and how they're going to build out their roster, that team construction is priority over player satisfaction. So it doesn't have to feel good that you go out there and get Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton is a top 10 quarterback by the numbers since 2011. And how often are you going to get a top 10 quarterback for $3 million? So it was a smart move by the Dallas Cowboys. And it may be a sleepless night here or there for Dak Prescott. I've been in a position where I was the backup to a player, and I also was that player who had a backup that was chomping at the bit and on my heels because of his production and his ability. So the days where Dak Prescott doesn't have his best performance, whether it's practice or a game, and we go out there and witness Dak put up one of those average 205 yards, one touchdown, one interception, the chance for Andy Dalton will get louder, not only on the outside, but inside for Dak, who may have a sleepless night here or there, knowing how good his backup really is. But in totality, this was a smart move by the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott in his negotiation has no concern over Andy Dalton being there. If they offered you $33 million in September before a career year, you are not in the same conversation with a backup quarterback who was just given $3 million. That is not just a discount deal. That's a completely different world. So Dak is safe in terms of his leverage, but there are going to be some sleepless nights, a little anxiety because his backup is damn good.
You know, this was nothing but a security blanket for the Dallas Cowboys. This was if somehow, some way, Dak doesn't want to take this new contract, then, yeah, Andy Dalton will be the guy going forward. Also, for McCarthy, look, you got somebody back there who's stable, that if something doesn't progress in the future with the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott, they're going to immediately start to look to move Andy Dalton to that starting lineup. And we talked about this the last time I was in the show. We talked about the available free agents. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the available free agents that was there, I brought up the fact that it would be smart for the Dallas Cowboys to bring in Andy Dalton, and we talked about it at the time for $17 or $18 million, but they're getting him for, $7 million? I mean, this is, you can't get a better deal than this. So I always felt that this was going to happen. I didn't think it would happen this fast. I didn't think that it will happen in this manner because of what Marcellus just said. They offered Dak such a big contract already. You're not just moving along from him. You're not just making a conscious decision going into the season that you're trying to move it to Andy. But let me tell you, this is a security blanket. If Dak Prescott does not take this contract that's offered to him and it moves on to next season, Dak Prescott won't be there. Andy Dalton will be the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I think this has significant impact. I think this is a clear sign to me that the Cowboys' level of frustration with Dak Prescott has reached a new level and a dangerous level. I think that if I'm Jerry Jones, if I'm Stephen Jones, if I'm Mike McCarthy, I think I start in my mind going like, hey, man, have we created Frankenstein with Dak Prescott? They love this kid. They've supported him with a tremendous offensive line, a great running back. They went out and got receiving help for him. They've built the pieces around Dak for Dak to have success. Dak took that and then basically said he and his agent, now I need to be the highest paid player in the NFL. I need to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And I think Jerry Jones and these guys, well, hold on, man. No. The Dak Prescott plan never, ever included making you the highest paid player in the NFL, highest paid quarterback in the NFL. It was always about surrounding you with the right pieces. To me, they've signed Andy Dalton, and I think it would be very hard for someone to argue to me that Andy Dalton, when playing at his highest level in Cincinnati, to me, every bit as good as Dak Prescott and what we've seen from him playing at his highest level in Dallas. You move Andy Dalton to the pieces that Dak has had supporting him, I'm not sure there's really a difference, or if Andy Dalton wouldn't have outperformed Dak Prescott. I think this is a significant move in the relationship between the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. I think Dak's leverage has been really damaged here in a negotiating front. I see this whole thing, Marcellus, as very significant.
I think it was a significant move, but not with significant impact. Remember, this move didn't come because of plan. These are unintended consequences. Basically, Andy Dalton fell in their lap because of the circumstances. Even Andy Dalton said, I didn't expect to be a free agent in this situation, and because I hit the free agency late, that devalued him. But his production is his production. So what do you expect the Dallas Cowboys to do? Go out there and find a worse backup quarterback? Like, you know what? We don't want to really tick off Dak, so let's get someone worse. Or let's just stick with Ben DiNucci and see how that plays out in case Dak finally gets hurt in the game and misses some time. So I understand that they Mr. Magoo their way into this situation. They didn't really see this coming, and it's here. But Dak, literally and figuratively, is in a different stratosphere than Andy Dalton in terms of what he's going to be compensated and what they expect of him as their franchise leader. Let's all remember that being a franchise quarterback is more than the numbers. Ask a Tom Brady and other elite quarterbacks. You have to have leadership. You have to inspire men. Nothing about Andy Dalton in crunch time has inspired the masses. And that's no shot at Andy Dalton. That's just showing what his record resembles. So I think with Dak, he's safe, even though he has a backup that is ready to go out there in case of emergency.
You know, in my opinion, you don't bring in a guy like Andy Dalton who started this long in the league, and I understand about his playoff wins and his accomplishments down the road. I get that he is not there. You don't bring a backup quarterback that's started, that's produced in the National Football League for 9 years to just be a backup. I think going forward, if Dak Prescott does not sign this contract, Andy Dalton, they're already looking to move him as that starting role and saying, you know what, Dak, we tried our best. We gave you an offensive lineman. We gave you the best running back in football. We gave you a hell of a defense. You still won't sign a contract. We might as well save $15 million a year and figure out a way to keep Andy Dalton here because, mind you, Andy Dalton is not old. He's not beat up. He can still play. So if they can get 4 or 5 years production, not even just as much production as Dak Prescott, but if they can get the same or even close to the amount of production that Dak Prescott got, they will already be looking to move forward as Andy Dalton is starting quarterback. If you're Dak Prescott, you have to be looking at this a little bit as a slap in the face. You have to. Because it's not like you're bringing a guy off the street and saying, you know, if he gets hurt or whatever, we have a stable quarterback who can come in and play. You brought a starting quarterback that's produced in the National Football League for 9 years to be my backup. That you're telling me that as soon as I don't perform, as soon as you're not getting what you want out of me, or as soon as I don't sign this contract, I'm out. This is a clear-cut indication that if Dak Prescott does not sign this contract, they are going to move on after this year?
I disagree. Look, there is a difference, and that difference has to be measured and respected. Dak has the second most wins as a starting quarterback since he's been in the league, and he's not behind Andy Dalton. And that's on Andy Dalton right there. So if you want to continue to win, if you want to continue to put yourself in a better situation, I'm not having a talent conversation. You stop having those after the combine for any prospect. It's about how it materializes and inspires others. That's where Dak Prescott certainly has the lead over Andy.
You know, I've always felt that Andy Dalton, if they brought him in, we talked about it several months ago, if they brought Andy Dalton in, you're going to get the same production and worst case, maybe a little drop-off that you have with Dak Prescott. And for the money that Dak is asking, you have to factor all these things in. Look, I'm not saying that Andy Dalton is a better quarterback. I'm not saying he's a better leader. I'm not saying he has anything over Dak Prescott. But for what the Dallas Cowboys have already put down on the table, they're already telling you, hey, we want you to be here long term. But if you can't make a decision, let us help you make the decision for you. And that's what's going on right now. They brought somebody in that's basically telling them, like, we want you here. But just in case you don't want to be here, this is what we got. So it did put a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott going forward. We watched it with Aaron Rodgers. We watched it for the last 20 years in the National Football League. I've seen the same thing that happened with Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers. I sat there and watched the whole thing. You bring somebody in who's capable of playing them. Even if Drew Brees panned out, you already have someone else there ready to go. This is the same type of situation. Andy Dalton has produced. I'm not saying that he's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. I'm not saying that he's won a bunch of playoff games or anything like that. But if you're talking about the money difference and what you're getting right now for Andy Dalton and Dak Prescott, what you're getting right now is not going to be that much of a drop-off. So they were smart by at least bringing him in, paying him what they're paying him, and at least put some pressure on Dak Prescott.
Thank you, Sean. That was Sean Merriman. All right, stick around.
Thank you, baby.
We got some more great stuff coming up. Brian Cox, former Dolphins great, he's going to join us and talk about Don Shula in about 20 minutes. But first, we're going to go out to Bucky Brooks' crib. We're going to continue the conversation about Dak Prescott and Andy Dalton. Donovan McNabb has played the race card on the Dak Prescott situation. Speak for yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. More after this.
Talking about ED isn't easy. Usually, we just brush it off or blame ourselves, saying things like, I lost my mojo. Or we avoid it altogether with excuses like, I had a long day at work, or sorry, honey, I'm just not feeling it. But with Roman, it is easy to talk about it with a real doctor who can prescribe real medication. It's simple, safe, and totally discreet. With Roman, you can get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. The doctor will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman will ship it to you with free 2-day shipping. The whole process is straightforward, simple, and discreet. ED used to be tough to tackle, but now there's Roman. Complete an online visit today to connect with a doctor and take care of it. Just go to GetRoman.com/speak to get a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's GetRoman.com/speak for a free visit to get started. GetRoman.com/speak.
From the crib, presented by Hyundai. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley, happy Monday to you. All right, let's roll out to Bucky Brooks' crib, and let's talk some more about Dak Prescott, the Dallas Cowboys, and Andy Dalton. Donovan McNabb, the former Philadelphia Eagle great, has played the race card on the Andy Dalton signing, tweeting out, so Andy Dalton signs a 1-year deal for up to $7 million if he reaches possible incentives. Jameis Winston signs a 1-year deal for $1 million. Dak Prescott can't seem to get his contract he deserves, and Cam Newton is still on the street. Anyone have any questions? Am I the only one? McNabb out here thirsting for some relevancy, has played the race card here. I don't see it. Any grown man that starts using the word deserve in any form or fashion, deserve is for little kids. Grown people know you don't get what you deserve. You get what you can negotiate. Marcellus, any truth to what Donovan McNabb's talking about here?
I There's some truth to it. To what degree, we don't know. I don't know if the truth is in the race card, not the card I would have played here, not the lens I'm seeing is through. It could be just the quarterback card as he threw Andy Dalton in there. Andy Dalton's not worth $3 million. He's worth much more than $3 million, but situations will arise in our lives, and you got to be smart about it. So Usher nailed that a while back, and Andy tried to play it properly now. That's all he could get. But let's look at this, because this is one of my favorite places in the world to be. Somewhere between coincidence and correlation. And when you don't know, guess what the old folks say you need to do? Until you hit bullseye, baby, keep throwing them damn darts. And that's what Donovan McNabb is doing. He's trying to hit bullseye. We're all trying to figure out what is going on in today's NFL in terms of this quarterback position. As I said, it's not black or white, but there is something to the line of black quarterbacks that are now finding themselves unemployed or devalued. And that's a longer line than the white quarterbacks. But there is a line for the white quarterback as well. So not exactly the way I would attack this, but until I have an exact answer, I'm never mad at somebody else trying to speak their piece.
Yeah, I can understand Donovan McNabb's frustration because he lived it. I had an old coach tell me a long time ago, black and average will get you fired. And so for Donovan McNabb, when you look at his plight, he went from being a guy that consistently led the Philadelphia Eagles to the NFC East title, led them to championship games, led them to a Super Bowl. 2 years later, he is out of the league. Typically, for African-American quarterbacks, they have a tough time finding themselves from being a star to then occupying a clipboard as a backup for years and years on end. For instance, Matt Schaub was a two-time Pro Bowler, but Matt Schaub has not been a good player for a long time. But every week when we see the Atlanta Falcons play, Matt Schaub is the quarterback too. How about Nick Foles? We've seen Nick Foles in multiple spots have an opportunity to start. It doesn't go well outside of Philadelphia. Yet, lo and behold, he's traded for a fourth-round pick and finds his way to Chicago. I think for Jameis Winston and Cam Newton, I think the issue that they have when they look around, the guys that are currently occupying the QB2 spot have never reached the mountains that they've climbed. And so you have a hard time when you've been taught from a kid that football is a meritocracy. You work, you perform, you produce, you get opportunities, but it doesn't seem like those opportunities are going their way. I can't put it all on race, but I can say it is interesting when you look at the accomplishments of some of the guys that are sitting on the sideline versus those that are occupying clipboards, and you just wonder why teams deem those guys to be better fits as backup quarterbacks.
Well, Bucky, you have to fit the role. And does Cam Newton want any parts right now of being a backup quarterback? I think most people would argue no. Most of the advice I've been hearing from people like Deion Sanders and others, don't be a backup quarterback. I don't think Cam Newton wants any parts of a $3 million contract with, maybe an additional $4 million in guarantees. Jameis Winston signed up to be a backup quarterback and go to what he considers the Harvard of quarterback school in New Orleans. That's the decision Jameis made. He could have probably gotten more money and gone someplace else, but he wanted to go to the Harvard of QB schools. I've seen this happen. Again, I always reference this. Jeff George, grew up with him, great friend of mine. He's like family to me. He was too talented to be anybody's backup quarterback in a real way, and he carried himself in a way like backup was beneath him, and it shortened his NFL career. And so it's all about, look, trust me, for 20 years, I've wanted to date Halle Berry. I'm not qualified. I don't fit the profile. So we can all want a bunch of different things, but do we fit the profile for that? Do we meet the qualifications? And then as it relates to Dak Prescott, can't get the contract he deserves. That's the kind of immaturity that I expect from a teenager. Dak Prescott was offered $33-some-odd million in September. Now, so there's a big debate about does he deserve 40? Does he deserve 36? Does he deserve more than Russell Wilson and all these other guys? There's a lot of people who say, no, he doesn't deserve that. He deserves what he can negotiate through leverage, and he doesn't have the leverage to get what he wants. No different than me and Halle Berry. And so I just don't see, when I see Jordan Love getting drafted basically to replace Aaron Rodgers, we need to just cut this whole thing out, man. These coaches just want to win, man. They're not sitting around going, oh, my God, Cam Newton's too black for me. Cam Newton wants too much money. He wants to be a starter. That's why he ain't got no backup job.
Hey, man, you broke that down, Whitlock. And I think we need to we're talking about McNabb using the race card and looking at it through that lens. I think that in its entirety, we need to stop looking at the top level and start looking at more of the middle of the pack or even the bottom level of quarterback. What I mean by that is a lot of guys who have this gripe that McNabb is trying to express, they look at it like, look, the NFL will give a black and white quarterback the same rewards, but different penalties. Same rewards. Russell Wilson gets paid the most in the league. He black. But the penalties are different once you start going down the hill. The brakes on the black quarterback car don't work as well as the white quarterback's car. So the white quarterback can stop here, disappear, come back, get traded for, and the black quarterback just runs off the mountain and off the road. And here's something about it, because you find yourself in that weird place, that precarious place between being a marginal starter in this league. Worse than being a black quarterback or whoever suggesting that is being a marginal starter. Because if you're not going to get picked up as a starter, and no one is really trying to do that, you're a highly paid backup, and no one's trying to do that. So you talk about getting caught between, and it's not between being a black quarterback or white quarterback. It's between what's your value versus what's your production going to be, being marginal. I think that's the deeper conversation.
Yeah, look, it's really a twisted conversation because there's so many things that are kind of blended in the conversation. Whether we talk about race or whether we talk about merit, there are a couple different things that are at play. But I can't understand Donovan McNabb's gripe and his argument, because let's just think about Jameis Winston and one of his classmates, Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota was benched for the last half of the year. Yeah, Marcus Mariota this offseason gets a 2-year, $17 million contract with $7.5 million in guarantees. Chase Daniel gets a contract over $3 million a year. Blaine Gabbert is re-signed as a backup quarterback, and we know that he can't play at a high level. And so the thing about it is, yes, you have race, you also have merit, you also have what I call like kind of the comfort level in the room, meaning that quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators are comfortable with guys that can speak their language and talk to talk on the board and all of those things. And sometimes when you have a big personality like Cam, or you have a guy that comes into the league with issues surrounding him and character like Jameis, it makes it very, very hard for those guys to be very comfortable with that kind of presence in the room.
Well, and again, you're talking about the qualifications of being a backup quarterback. Is big personality, is that part of the qualities of being a backup quarterback? I think most coaches don't want their backup quarterback with a big personality, a big brand. So take personality out. Just take Tim Tebow and that big brand he carried around with him, got him run up out of the league. When you start talking about character issues, do you want a backup quarterback with character issues? No. And so to me, a lot of this doesn't have to do with race. It has to do, what are the qualities you're bringing to the table as a quarterback in this league? Do they fit the profile of a backup quarterback? And then when we start talking about penalties and rewards for being a quarterback, let's just remember, Michael Vick got 2 $100 million contracts despite character issues, despite some serious off-the-field issues. And trust me, I love Mike, glad that it happened. But Mike was the blackest of black quarterbacks, got 2 $100 million contracts after going to prison. So when we start talking about penalties and rewards, man, we can dice and slice this any way we want. We need to quit giving these guys excuses and give them good advice. If you want to transition into a backup quarterback, there's some personality traits and some ways you have to carry yourself in order to get those jobs. Quit, instead of going in, oh, I'm getting treated racist. Now, hey, man, tone it down. Go in there and be the starting quarterback's best friend. Help that guy prepare every week. That's the role of a backup quarterback. And that's why Matt Schaub and Chase Daniel and these guys keep getting these jobs. They playing the role for the number 2. Trust me, I'm on a diet right now because I'm trying to play the role for Holly Berry. I need to lose weight if I want to be in the Holly Berry game. it is what it is. I can blame it on racism or fat shaming or whatever. Instead, I'm going to stay on this diet. I'm going to keep dropping these pounds, and we'll see what happens. Maybe by age 60, she'll look my way. All right, we got to keep it rolling. We're going to talk Last Dance, Michael Jordan, the 1998 Chicago Bulls with Rick Bucher. We're going to go out to his crib in the Bay Area, our NBA analyst. Speak for yourself from the crib, presented by Hyundai. More after this. Welcome back to Speak for Yourself from the crib. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. All right, we're going to keep it rolling by going out to the Bay Area and get our own Rick Bucher, our NBA analyst, longtime NBA reporter. Rick Bucher joins us from his crib. Speak for Yourself, presented by Hyundai. All right, let's talk about my favorite new documentary, Last Dance. Two more amazing episodes last night on ESPN. This one, these two episodes, I thought covered some of Jordan's biggest controversies, including his non-involvement in politics. Last night's episode covered Jesse Helms and Harvey Gantt's political race, and Jordan choosing not to involve himself in a big political race in the 1990s in the Carolinas. Jordan, of course, they went over, and Jordan owned it last night. He did say jokingly, he said on the bus about Republicans buy sneakers too. Marcellus, do you have a problem with the way Michael Jordan's approach to politics?
I don't have a problem with it at all. Look, one, it worked. So it's hard to undress success and laugh or criticize it. Like, you got to let this man be his own man. And I think to a greater conversation, the best you can do in terms of social responsibility is take care of you and yours. And I think Michael Jordan did that well. You talk about this specific situation and a fully formed Michael Jordan who is even bigger than his identity of Michael Jordan, how he feels, because he has an image. He has a brand. He is an icon. He just can't accept all opportunities to try and make a greater good because of the individual nuance that comes from that experience. He doesn't know everything about everyone. So to go through that process, you get yourself in a compromised position if you're not fully vetting situations. And let's be real, in this situation, you may have great politics, but then you have a scandal, and then all of a sudden, Michael Jordan's wrapped up in all of that, even though it's for a greater good. So I look at Michael Jordan as a person who realized and was coached by David Falk that, hey, the best brand is to lay low, brother. Stay neutral. That's going to be the biggest and best for you. Your impact will come in different ways in terms of how you change people's imagination of themselves, and how them being inspired by you will make them make more positive choices. So as I was told, when it comes to anything of social responsibility or charitable gifts, it's about time, talent, and treasure. He gave his treasure. He gave a donation. You don't always have to give all three T's. So he didn't give his time. He didn't necessarily lend his talent to it, but he certainly took care of it, and I think that should be enough.
Not only do I not have a problem with it, I appreciate it. I don't know when we got to the point where we expected athletes, particularly athletes of color with a big platform, to have an opinion and to be social activists and everything. I appreciate the fact that Michael said, I don't know the man. This isn't my lane. And that for me is as good as it needs to be. I think there's much more damage done when someone speaks out of turn and they are not aware of everything that's going on, and they try to be an activist. They try to speak out. And I believe that does more damage than good. So for where he was then, for where he was in the arc of his career, whether it's then or now, I appreciate someone who says, look, I'm not qualified to speak on this. And we don't go to nuclear physicists. We don't go to Warren Buffett or Bill Gates and ask them for their opinions on who the best player in the NBA is. I'm not sure I understand why we often go to athletes and expect them to give us an insightful, intelligent answer on what someone should be or what someone should be doing in politics or any other field. If they do, if they can use that platform, terrific. But it's a double-edged sword. You have to be prepared to approach it in the right way.
Listen, I didn't understand Michael Jordan's reluctance to be involved with politics during his playing career as fully as I do now. I can't remember everything that I wrote about Michael Jordan at that time. So I want to be given a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But I certainly appreciate Michael Jordan having enough self-awareness of who he was at that time, a dedicated athlete, and not trying to be more than that. I think the media misrepresents who Muhammad Ali was, and we pretend like Muhammad Ali was active in a bunch of political issues, and it's a total mischaracterization of Muhammad Ali and the Nation of Islam, which had virtually nothing to do with politics, the religious organization that backed Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali didn't want to be involved in the war. He was drafted into the war, and he took a strong position on that. But to sit out here and pretend like Muhammad Ali was out here campaigning for different political people or whatever is a joke. I say this as a very mediocre athlete, nowhere on the same planet as Michael Jordan, and nowhere on the same planet as Marcellus Wiley. I remember being a very good high school athlete and good enough to get a scholarship, football scholarship to Ball State. My focus was athletics at that time. I knew very little about the political world and the rest of the world all the way up until my athletic career was over. And then I started caring about some of the broader issues in society. And that's why many of my friends from high school and college sit here in amazement. Like, oh my God, Whitlock knows something besides the sports page. If you go look at my transcripts, I was a virtual idiot in college. I got a 1.0 my first semester. I did not take school very seriously until football ended for me. Michael Jordan carried on with athletics, and he said last night, I was completely into athletics. I didn't know a lot about this other stuff. I've seen too many other athletes. They take political positions based on what they're told by someone else, not by what they really believe. I applaud Michael Jordan for staying in his lane and, again, using his money to support the issues he believes in, but keeping his mouth where his mind was, and his mind was on basketball. I respect the hell out of that.
Hey, to your point, man, I think this needs to be a grand lesson to all. Like, one, it's not just about what can you focus on, but what are you genius at? Think about that. Don't just start talking and mishandling situations just because you feel like you've made it. And what did you make it in? You didn't make it in politics, but now you're going to dive head first into politics. One of the most dangerous people walking this planet is a person who knows a little, but can say it to a lot of people. Think about it. You know this much, but your platform's so big, once you say it, everyone hears it. And a lot of people, unfortunately, will believe that. And it happens all the time with people who are not well-versed in situations. And good for him to walk away from a fight he's not properly prepared to win. And if you think about it, it's the same thing that happens on the streets every single day. The person who walks away from the fight is looked at and mischaracterized as being weak. When in reality, that's the strong one. It's like, nah, I'm good. I'm bigger than this. I'm better than this. I'm not ready to do this. Michael Jordan saw a fight that he wasn't prepared to do, and he walked away from it. But we're going to mischaracterize him as being the wrong guy. Meanwhile, someone who's in that fight misleading other people will actually be the one that we applaud and laud, which is insane to me. So I respect you, Jordan, for doing it the right way.
All right, very quickly, let's move on to the other topic covered in last night's episodes of Last Dance. Michael Jordan and gambling. And I don't think this was the greatest look for Michael Jordan. His sunglass-wearing interview with Ahmad Rashad, where he basically said, man, I ain't lost all my money. My family can eat. I don't have a gambling problem. I own a house and cars. Not the greatest look. Rick, quickly here, do you think Michael Jordan had a gambling problem?
No, he had a PR problem. I agree with you. The sunglasses was a bad look. The rationale he had for not having a problem was not a good explanation. But look, I know some people who have gambling problems, who have the addiction. His going to Atlantic City after game 1 before game 2, going there with his dad and coming back at 2:30 in the morning or 1 o'clock, whatever it was, is proof to me that he didn't have a problem. Because the people that I know that have a gambling problem, they would not have made it back from Atlantic City in time for the game. They would have been still there, staying up all night. So the fact of the matter is, if I look, did it ruin his health? No. Did it ruin his career? Not that I'm aware of. Did it ruin relationships? Not that I'm aware of. There was some question about the people who he was hanging out with when he was gambling. But he said, and he says it in the documentary, I learned my lesson on that. And he was more careful, wasn't aware of who he was hanging out with. But that's a different matter than whether you actually have a gambling problem. I have no evidence that he did, in spite of how big it became.
Look, just listen to what we're asking. Does he have a gambling problem? That's actually being redundant, because if you gamble, that's a problem. Listen to me now. I'm a former gambler who doesn't gamble anymore. Inherently in gambling, taking the risk of I don't care if it's $1 or if it's $1 million, is absurd if you think about it, because I will use myself as an example, who used to gamble, one day cold turkey, no more. I remember vividly days where I needed $1. Like growing up, food stamps, welfare, mama got a couple pennies and some change laying next to the purse. I don't know, did I go in the purse and get the change out, or did it fall out? Regardless, I needed $1. Fast forward 10 years, I'm in the NFL. I could gamble for hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. And losing sight and perspective, there was a day where all of this mattered, and now I've raised my floor to a point where that doesn't matter. So watching Michael Jordan play quarters in the corner, that's a problem. Hearing Michael Jordan owe a $57,000 check or $1.2 million to someone else, that's a problem. But gambling in itself is a problem. Did he have an extreme gambling problem? No. But let's not act like gambling in its core inherently is not an issue.
Listen, totally agree with you, Marcellus. I'm from a gambling family. My mother took me to a pea-shake house when I was a little kid. If you're from Indianapolis, you know what I'm talking about. My father and me, we'd go to Vegas and gamble. That's not a good sign, Rick. That means that me and my father had a gambling problem, and my mother and everybody in my family. I'm from a gambling family.
Right, everybody.
Marcellus is right. Gambling's a problem. All right, we got to keep it moving. Brian Cox, former NFL great, former player for Don Shula. He's going to join us from his crib, and we'll remember Don Shula, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. Speak for Yourself, presented by Hyundai. More after this. Welcome back to Speak for Yourself. Sad news in the NFL today. Legendary Dolphins coach Don Shula passed away at the age of 90. The Dolphins issued a statement saying Shula died peacefully at his home. Shula is still the NFL's all-time winningest coach and won 2 Super Bowls, including the 1972 perfect season. All right, we're joined now by Brian Cox, who was drafted by Don Shula in 1991, played for him from 91 until 1995. Brian, how much did Don Shula mean to your career?
Well, I woke up this morning to a sudden phone call. Don Shula is responsible for my career, I would say, in its totality, because the man taught me how to love. He taught me trust. He taught me responsibility. He taught me selflessness, where, you would do things for him that you wouldn't do for some other coaches. I mean, I really love the man. I'm gonna miss him. I'm sad. But, when I think about it, I feel even sadder because the last time I saw him was Super Bowl 50 in San Francisco, and he rolled up in his wheelchair and he gave me the finger and he said, I taught him everything he knows. And that was the last time I'd ever seen him. And that makes me sad. That makes me really sad.
Brian, you were a wild and crazy guy when you entered the NFL, playing for the most legendary coach at that time. How did Don Shula deal with that wild and crazy Brian Cox?
Well, he let me go a little bit, but he reeled me in. And when he'd call you to the office, you knew you had some problems going on. And he'd get me in his office and he'd lay into me. But what I remember most about those times when he would have to get after me is at the end of those conversations, he'd say, "I love you. Let's go out there and let's get the team ready this week and let's go get a win." So he was real big on discipline and discipline his players. But at the end of it, it was always, "I love you and let's go to work."
Just for perspective, rest in peace, obviously, Don Shula. He coached against George Halas and Bill Belichick. Literally, that's the first coach in the NFL in 1920 and a coach who is still active today and had a winning percentage against both of those coaches. Amazing. Rest in peace. That said, man, you played for some tremendous coaches, Belichick, Parcells, and Shula. Who had the most impact on Brian Cox?
All of them had their impact. I think Shula taught me how to be a man coming into this league, taught me how to be a pro, taught me respect, and like I said, the selfishness that he taught on the team. When you go to Parcells, that's the guy that I still talk to mostly today, that I'm closest to, has taught me so much about life and about manhood. He's been the biggest father figure. And Bill Belichick, I don't know off the field. I just know him as a great coach. You don't compare any of them because how do you define greatness? That's 3 Hall of Fame coaches I played for. The only guy that I know played for more than 3 Hall of Fame coaches would be Eric Green, and he played for Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Belichick, and Parcells and Shula. So he played for 4 Hall of Famers. But, how do you define greatness? They were all great.
Now, can you group them together in terms of their similarities? How were they the same?
Well, Belichick and Parcells were the same. They teach and coach out of fear. If you don't do your job, they're going to get rid of you. They're going to let you know it. And they go with everybody. That may be the rift between Brady and Belichick because they call everybody out. Shula was different. Shula taught out of love and just leadership, and he was one of those old school coaches that could get the most out of players by letting each guy be an individual person. But he was just that guy that he ended up getting fired after 33 seasons as a head coach, 31 of which had winning records. He got fired at the end of his career because he was too loyal and would not fire any of his assistants. Loyalty was high on his list, and I just thank God that I had the opportunity and blessed enough that I had the opportunity to meet him, play for him, and get to know him a little bit off of the field.
All right, Brian, Shula, Parcells, Belichick. If you had to take one guy on a fishing trip, who you taking?
Parcells, for sure. And that's no disrespect to Belichick or Shula, but I just talk to Parcells the most right now. He's like a father figure to me. I don't make one important decision without calling him. Now, Coach Shula and I had that kind of relationship. When we saw each other, he'd open a restaurant in California when I was leaving out there. He'd call and invite me and my wife to come out to the opening. We go to restaurants and we see each other around, but I just wasn't around him enough towards the end. Whereas with Parcells, we talk on the phone. I probably talk to him at least once a month, maybe 12, 16, 20 times a year, where we talk about different things. So he'd be the guy that I take on the fishing trip probably. And I don't know Bill Belichick off the field outside of football.
Would you consult with Parcells about the color of your shirt next time you're on this show? Perhaps some advice there. To go along
that
with.
shirt too.
Jason, you too big to have this kind of swag.
Oh!
That's true. Good point. All right, we got to go. Uncle Jimmy's around the corner. We're going to talk about Andy Dalton's approval rating. Speak for yourself from the crib. More after this.
Shot fired!
All right, welcome back to Speak for Yourself from the crib. Happy Monday. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley. Let's roll out to Uncle Jimmy's crib and get our approval ratings for Andy Dalton. Do you have a big dummy of the day?
Hell yeah. Big dummy of the day go to the person that still think that they made it into Ball State because they was good in football. No, you made it into Ball State because your daddy let your professors drink for free at his club. That's why you made it to Ball State.
That's good. 2 for 1.
There's probably some truth to that. You have any thoughts on Andy Dalton and the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, hey man, look. First of all, we all know that Jerry Jones is a player. Okay? All right, and right now, man, this is the oldest trick in the book. Okay? All right? Right now, look, man, Jerry Jones got needs. And since Dak don't want to fulfill them needs, Jerry Jones did what any of us would do. Found him a redhead with low expectations to make us feel better about ourselves. Who could do it? We've all done it. Stop lying.